Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be going through how to create plan sheets. And right now I'm in my County Road 512 plan sheets, and I've already cut these plan sheets, but I wanted to kind of sit in this file and show you kind of what it looks like once you have it done. So we have 3 clip borders here, and what that ends up doing is we can use our tool to create a drawing model and a sheet model. And once we get into the County Road 510, which I'm going to do next, I can kind of show you what the output of that stuff is. So what we need to do first is create a plan RD for our CR 510, which I've already done. But if you're starting fresh, you're going to come up here to FDOT tab, and you're going to click Create File. That's going to bring up your Create File dialog. And you're going to want to go find your Plan RD. And that is in the roadway discipline roadway files file group. And when you come down here, you'll see that it's going to create a plan RD01. That's okay. It doesn't really matter what it's called because we're going to change it later. It's creating 01 even though this is called 01 because I put underscore CR512 after it. And then the only thing you want to make sure you do is select the correct county that you're working in, which will set the correct coordinate system. So if you were going to create that file, you would hit create open file and it would bring you to that file. But since I've already created the file, I'm going to hit close and I'm going to go open, and I'm going to actually go to my County Road 510 file. Okay, we are now in my County Road 510 file. Now I had originally put in some plan sheets here that were 40 scale. I spoke with FDOT and they do not currently have profile annotation that comes in at 40 scale. They only have 50 scale. So what I'm going to do here is change my plan sheets from 40 scale to 50 scale. So what I first need to do is delete all of these all these clip borders and everything that I've already created. So the first thing we want to do is come down to our models, and you might not have this here. If you need to get to models, you can come here to home and to models here. I pin a lot of these things down here at the bottom, things that I typically use so I can get to them quickly. So you can see it's created sheet models and drawing models for all of the drawing boundaries that I've created. So I'm going to go ahead and select all those and hit delete. So that's going to delete all those models. Now all of my boundaries are still here, my boundary elements, so I'm going to delete those as well. And then the last thing you have to do is when you create these, it creates a saved view of each of those. And you want to make sure you delete these as well, because if you don't delete these, if I go in there and create some more plan sheets, it's going to start calling them plan 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's going to increment past the last one. So I'm going to make sure I delete these so that my increment again starts at 1. Okay. Now, I know that my profile starts somewhere right around here at 100. So I want to make sure that my plan sheets and my profile sheets line up station-wise as best they can. I'm not sure that it's going to be exactly perfect with how ORD and FDOT are doing their overlap for plan sheets, but we don't have that for profile sheets. So I'm going to at least make sure I start at the same point. They may not end at the same point and have the same increment, but I think that's the best we're going to get for now. So what I want to do is I want to start my plan sheet right here at 99 plus 60. So we are going to go up here to Drawing Production, and we're going to go to our Named Boundary tool. And that gives us our named boundary, place named boundary. So we want to use this first tool here, which is based on our civil plan. So I'm going to call this 510. Okay. All right, let's try that again. So I'm going to go up here and go to my named boundary tool, and there's several drawing seeds in here you can choose from. We're going to do plan only. There is plan over profile, several other things in here, but we're going to choose plan only for now. Our detail scale is 1:50, as I said before. We're going to do 510, and I want to make sure I put _1 because that's going to be the name of the first sheet, and then it's going to increment from there. I'm going to call this CR510, but it's probably not going to save that. I think there's another bug in there where basically that group gets named whatever your alignment name is. So it's probably going to call it CLCR510, same name as that complex element right there. We can change that later, but it's not all that important. Just helps you organize everything. So if you look at the lower left-hand part of your screen, it's asking me to identify path element. So a lot of these tools, you want to make sure you're looking at the lower left-hand part of your screen for what it wants you to do. So I'm going to select my path. Now it wants me to identify the start. So that's when I can start putting in here. So I already know where I want to start, so I can key in 99 plus 60. Oops. And so it's asking me to accept, reject the start point. So I'm going to accept that 99 plus 60. And you can see that because we have that overlap, that little red dashed line there is a little bit beyond 9960 because of the overlap. But that's okay. That's working as they intend. So what I'm going to do is just drag these out. So you can see as I drag out here, move this a little bit, it's creating all the sheets that I need. So I'm going to make sure I just drag out past the end of my proposed work in the -7 job here. So then I'm going to identify path endpoint. So I'm going to data point to select the endpoint. And now it's accepting, rejecting. So this is the last button click, but I want to do something right here is I'm going to unclick create drawing so that we can go through that part separately. So I'm going to accept my sheets. So I've got all my sheets laid out. They look good. Everything I need to do. We're going to go back up to our name boundary tool, and we're going to click this little down arrow next to named boundaries. And that's going to bring up our name boundaries dialog box. And in here we can see that we have some plan groups. And looks like I didn't delete my old plan group. So let's delete that old plan group. And like I said, it tried to name it the same as the name of the complex element, but it incremented it because it already had one in there. So we can just go hit properties here, and we can just call it CR510. And it has updated. It doesn't. It's like a lot of things I've noticed in ORD. It doesn't update right away, but if you close this and open this again, now it's fixed. So you'll notice that bug quite a bit with things not updating until you reload dialog boxes or reload models or reload files. That's pretty typical. So what I'm going to do to actually create the drawing and sheet models is I'm going to click my whole group, and these are like toggle buttons here. So I want to show the create drawing dialog so you can see it's highlighted so I can see it's on. And I want to annotate the plan drawing. Now that I have those on and my group selected, I can come over here and create plan drawing. And this is the create drawing box that would have come up if we had left that check mark ticked on. So you can see most of these things are going to be populated by how we created our drawing boundaries in the first place. So we are on drawing seat plan only. We're 1 on 50. Our plan annotation is selected. There's not really anything else you can select in here other than plan annotation. You can select grid, but we only need annotation. And as of right now, that really doesn't do a whole lot except put a north arrow with a scale. So don't expect a whole lot out of that. So we want this to be full size 1:1 for our sheet model. And we just want to make sure our detail scale here matches our annotation scale throughout. And I'm not going to add these to sheet index right now, but you could just check that on if you want to, but you can easily add them to sheet index later once you've finished everything up. So I'm going to hit OK. And after some processing and creating all the drawing and sheet models, I'm taken to the last sheet in my set. And like I said before, there are some weird things that require some updating. So like you can see, it says full size on this north arrow here. If I go ahead and change to the previous sheet, it still says that. So some of these things takes getting out of the entire file and back in, or just let's see if we can go to this and it'll change. Yeah, see there. So I went to the actual sheet model and it updated. And sometimes you won't see everything in these things. It's just ORD bugs. I promise it all works. Sometimes you just have to actually leave the file and come back because we can see everything's here. That's updated to 1 on 50. So some other issues that I've noticed. So this sheet's not so bad. One thing I want to go over is, let's say we want to change the name of this roadway plan. So what they have default in here is putting the word sheet after this, which is not correct. We want to make sure we're matching FDM. FDM says roadway plan is what this needs to be called. So in order to change this sheet title, we're going to go to File, which takes you to the backstage, and go to Properties. And that will pop out the File Properties. And we can come over here to under Extended to the title and just delete sheet. And like all things ORD, it takes going to another model for that to work. So you can see that's updated. Now that's updated for the entire file. This sheet has a little more of the problem that I encounter with some of these clip borders when we go along these arcs. And so it looks like we did get some annotation in here. So this annotation right here is coming from the drawing model. So we'll show that in a second. What I want to show here is, I'm going to go to my drawing tab up here. And right now I'm on default, which is, let's just change this to non-plotting for now so that we can keep this stuff in here. I use non-plotting element a lot. It's just a yellow line that doesn't print on anything, but it's good to use for your normal lines in construction lines. So we can see that this border is going outside my sheet border, and it's just a thing with ORD. There's really not any way to fix it. What it's doing is, there in one of those settings when we're cutting our sheets, you can set the number of chords it creates on the outside here, and we could probably set it to 1 and see how that goes, but most of the time 5 works on tangents, and then sometimes we have these curves. So the way I fix this is I go and I right click and hold on this, and I want to activate the default model where this sheet clip is sitting. And we're going to let that activate a minute. And I just want to draw a line. Make sure I'm on snap here. I want to draw a line. It's still on default. That's fine. We'll change that later. I just want to draw a line representing the bottom of that sheet border. And I'm actually drawing this in the default model because I've activated that, but it's nice I'm using this sheet as a guide. So I'm going to do the same thing at the top. And if you ever have sheets that start overlapping out here, you can also use the sides to fix that. So when I'm done, I'm going to deactivate. And I'm going to go back to my default model. And you can see that I've drawn these lines out here, which I can, it doesn't, well, I think they're going to be helpful later when we need to do our text. But unfortunately, I'm going to leave them here for now, but I'm getting a bug right now, another bug in ORD, where I can only see the levels that are actually in this file. And again, like all things ORD, if you leave the file and come back in, you'll be able to access all the levels again. Don't know why it does that, but that's the way it is. So what I want to do is, I know this is my sheet border, and this element here, if I manipulate this, and I'm just going to drag these points and line them up with that line. If I manipulate this element, it's manipulating the clips in the drawing model and the clips in the sheet model. So I'm lining them up at the bottom there. And then for this last one, I'm going to do it to the intersection right there so that we're not going over. And let's do that one. So I'm going to finish doing this top chord. Sometimes you have something like this, you can either leave it, since we know we're inside the sheet, or you can grab your construct line at active angle, just click anywhere here, draw your line up, and then go to the intersection. So I know I can delete that line. I'm going to leave these so I can change them next time I come in, because I know I'm going to have to fix at least this other sheet here. So now we can go back into our sheet 7, and you can see it's been fixed. So these fields are populated by the Workset Properties, and when you first open ORD on the right hand side are the Workset Properties, and I can show you those in a second. Since I had a little crash there, I had to reload MicroStation, and I wanted to sneak this little piece in here about the Workset Properties. So we need to make sure that we are on at least ORD Release 2 with FDOT Connect MR1 so that we have these appropriate properties for our work set. So we can come in here and open these advanced properties and edit some of these things. And like I said, the FPID, our firm name is in here. I actually need to call this CR510. So these things, and the county, I believe the county's in here somewhere, Indian River. So those things, once we hit OK, will be reflected in our sheet borders. So we can change these at any time, and I believe these are saved to, let's see where those go. That goes to the DGN workset file. So I can see that that was just updated. So I know that that gets saved over to that DGN workset file. So that's why this file is rather important, because it's going to have our workset properties along with our sheet index. So we need to make sure that nobody messes around with that file or moves it or anything like that. Sheets are cut in the future is, most of you know how we've been attaching our motif files to plan sheets in the past using a SS4, and we use our live nesting and never. And they have it set up as always. So what never is going to do, again, for those that are unaware, is if I go, I'm going to change, let me do 7 again in the sheet model real quick. So the sheet has to do the same thing. So I'll reference and never. And I'm just going to do an example real quick. So if I go to so right now we can see that, let's just say this tree line is on, for example. And I go into my default model. And let's just go and turn that tree line off. Turn off level by element, tree line. Now the tree line's off. If I go into 7, tree line's still there, which it shouldn't be. Wonder if I need to update this first. Yeah, so that's off. That's off. Okay, so it looks like we need to kind of go through the process of drawing model, sheet model. But the difference I wanted to show is, I believe if we go to 6, tree line's still there. That's what I was hoping to show, at least, is that because this is set to allow or always, doesn't matter, that will always kind of stick to what it was when it was created. So if I come in here and I go over to my level display, and let's go down to my topo file, so we can see that, where's tree line? So tree line is still, is it woods? Is that one? No, it's tree line grove. So that's off. So if I turn that off here with this on allow, it'll always be off regardless of what I do in the default model / motif model. But I'm going to turn it back on. If I do that same thing over in 7, and I'm guessing I'm going to have to do it. Let's just use this as an example. I think the drawing model will make it more clear. If I come in here and I turn this back on. So I turned it back on, but it's set up to be never. So I don't know if I'm going to have to actually leave the file and come back in, or if just switching models does it. Yes, I'm probably going to have to, well, no, it's fine. Because all I did was switch models, but as soon as I switched back to this model, it reverted back to having that tree line off, which is shown in the default model. So that's why it's important to set everything to never, because then we can set up everything exactly the way we want it to be shown in the default model. All the levels that are on, all the references that are on, any clip masking, anything of that sort, we can do in our default model. And as long as everything is set to never in both the sheet and drawing model, it will be reflected through all of the sheets. So that's something we want to make sure that we do through all of these models, unfortunately, but you should just have to do it once and then it'll be done. So there is some cleanup to do with these sheets, unfortunately, but once we get it done, our sheets are pretty much done. And now we need to start doing labeling. So I'm still kicking around what I want to do with labeling. We could choose to do our labeling in this file, or we could choose to do a text file and reference it in here like we've been doing. Treat this as a motif file and do the text. I'm kind of leaning toward a text file. I don't really want to do a whole lot in this file just because there's a lot of moving parts with, I don't want people turning levels on and off in here and messing up the way the sheets look. I want to treat this more like a true motif/plan file where we kind of set it and forget it, more or less, which is the way it should be. I mean, we shouldn't have to do a whole lot in here. So the text file can kind of be our file where we can turn things on and off and check stuff. So I think that's the way I'm leaning. FDOT has told me that that seems to be okay. They're going to support that, or drawing it in here. I mean, we could do a text file, we could draw it here, or we could draw it in here. And I would definitely not want to do that. I don't want to draw it in each individual drawing model, because then it's very difficult to copy things from one thing to the next, and if you want to go to the next sheet, you got to switch models, and it just seems kind of like some of the other instances of text we've encountered. So I want to avoid that. I think I'm going to go and recommend creating a text file. I think that's the way we're going to do things. So that is how we create plan sheets based on an alignment, a complex element. It's a little bit different when we want to create just a normal detail sheet, like a typical section sheet, or a general note sheet, or a traffic control detail sheet. So I want to go through how we're going to create those sheets as well. And it's going to be a similar situation where you have a default model, a drawing model, and a sheet model. So I'm going to, what you would first do is, let's just say we're going to do a typical section sheet. So you would go and create your file and find the typical section sheet and create it. Now, when you create these types of sheets, it's going to create those things for you, the drawing and the sheet model. And I think FDOT's stance was they want you doing your drawings in the actual sheet model for these types of things. I don't necessarily agree with that. Most projects we have multiple typical section sheets, different details and things like that, and I think it makes more sense to do all your drawing in the default model. So that's kind of what I've done in my typical section, and I'm going to show you the example that I've come up with on how I'm doing my typical section sheets. Okay, now I'm in my typical section sheet in the sheet model. So what we have here is kind of typical. We have our default model where this stuff is sitting. It's referenced into a drawing model and then into a sheet model. So I want to go to my default. And what I've done here is kind of created a box that represents the inside of that sheet border. And FDOT really hasn't provided us with this box. So my idea right now is I'm going to do this actually right now while I'm in the video. Is I'm going to create a box. It doesn't matter what level it's on, but I want to put this on some simple element. And I don't even care that it's default. Let's just put it on like a miscellaneous. And you can see, oh look, all my levels are here again. Since I left the ORD crashed on me, switching files. Let's just put this on miscellaneous 1. And we're going to change element attributes. Good. Okay. So I know that this is a 20 scale box. And I'm going to scale, so I'm going to scale this down. I need 5. Okay. Now we got our box. So that should represent a 1 scale box. Cell. I don't know where cell origin is. So this is another cool thing here. I don't even know where cell origin is, but I can go up into this search tool and define cell origin. It's sitting right there. And I guess another thing, define cell. If you float over this, it'll tell you all the places that it is. So drawing, placement tools. Yeah, there it is. It's in placements right here. Define cell origin. Cool. So I'm going to put my origin there. Doesn't really matter where it is because it's just a box. So I got my origin. And I'm going to go to my cell, my cells. And that's going to bring up all my sheet cells. And for this, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to put it in the cell. I'm going to call it CR510. Okay, so I made a new cell library. Now that I have that open, we need to make sure that we click on the thing that we want to make a cell. And we've made sure we've set our cell origin, and that will activate this button right here, our create cell. And I'm going to call this, let's call this named boundary. Named boundary reference or something. It's fine. So I'll do graphic. I'm going to create. Okay, so now I have that cell created. So I can get rid of this. And I can make sure I usually just do this. Select the tool again to get rid of that little origin guy. So let's say I want to, I'm probably going to have to create another typical section sheet here in the future, probably for CR512. So I'm just going to put that over here. And I'm going to grab my name boundary tool. And I'm going to turn that off. And I'm just going to go 20. So that should make it the same size as this box. I'm going to place it. So now I just have a box. Just going to line it up a little bit. I like things being straight lines. Close that. Go to our drawing production. And I'm going to create a new name boundary. And this is going to be by element. So before we did by civil plan, this is going to be by element. So I'm going to choose my plan only drawing seed. Let's see, what do I have so far? Let's see what I have. So what I called this. So these are, I need to get rid of these, but I called this, I'm just going to call this typical sections. And I'll call this one 1 because the other one's going to be 2. And I can add it to a group I've already created. And I think I'm just going to choose to create drawing right away. So as soon as I click, now we've got to look at the bottom here. So identify path element. So I think I need to reset and then select. Okay, thought that might be the case. So I think it's because it's a cell. Like I said, doing this in real time. Because it's a cell, we want to drop it into just its normal shape. Now, we can try that again. Plain only, typical sections 1. Good. So it's asking me for path element. I don't have a path element. So I'm going to reset, and I'm just going to select this element and accept. And see, it's created, now it's created that boundary. For typical sections, the reason that I'm using 20 scale up here is because I've drawn this typical section to scale. So if it says 11 feet lanes, those are 11-foot lanes. DOT's typical cells, typical section cells that they include, are not drawn to scale at all. And it's pretty frustrating because if we want to do something like this, where I basically copied this lane work and this labeling, plopped it down here and drew the barrier wall and traffic railing onto it, that makes it very difficult to draw this extra bit to scale, or anything that's atypical to scale. So that's why I always make sure I draw my typical sections to scale. And then I come in here and I chose 20 scale because that's basically the size of the sheet that fits this the most appropriately. So I'm going to go grab my 20 scale. I don't want any annotation, so I'm just going to choose none. We don't really need to annotate anything. I just need the sheet to be created. And we're going to do, make sure our detail scale is 20. So that just controls the annotation scale of all these labels and text elements that I have. So when we're going to head and open model, see what we get. So there's nothing there because I didn't draw anything in there. So let's just for the heck of it make sure that that's working. And I'm just going to draw a big old X between these lines so that we can make sure the boundary elements, make sure the clip is in the right place. Beautiful. Looks like it worked pretty nice. So that is how we're going to create sheets. So if you're going to create a general note sheet, you can go grab that cell and just plop it in at 1. General notes are going to be at 1. Text, your annotation scale is going to be 1. I would imagine that our traffic control typical section sheets are going to be at something like 20, so that we can put those typical sections into scale, so they're the same size typical sections that I essentially have here. So we can use 20 scale or 10 scale or whatever scale you're going to use. You're going to put that box down, and then you're going to use that to create your named boundary. So you can see that it created it to the correct size. I already come in here, and because I think the regular name of these sheets is something like typical section details and something or other. So I already came in here and changed the name of the sheet. You can see that CR510 is here now since I updated the Workset Properties, so that worked. I got some weird stuff in. Okay, so those, looks like those groups have worked themselves out. So I can change the names of these if I want to. Not a big deal. Right now you can see that it's kind of putting the sheet number in here as whatever this is called. That's going to be modified when we do our sheet indexing. If I come over here I haven't even added this to the sheet index yet. Typically when you add something to the index, it's just going to throw it out here. Like I have these intersection detail sheets out here, it just chucks them out here. And we'll have to come in and drag them and drop them into the roadway. Another thing to watch out for is this thing is still not working all that great, so I can't just drag my typical section sheet up before my plan sheets and everything will renumber and fix itself. I literally have to like drag all this stuff out and then put it back into the roadway folder in the order that I want it to be ordered right now. So more ORD fun. And so that's pretty much it for creating sheets for the time being. I'm going to get this video edited and hopefully posted up onto YouTube so that we can all take a look. And then I think if anybody has any questions, maybe we'll do another video or a webinar or something like that, and we can cover any issues people are having. But for now, thanks for watching, and hopefully this was very helpful, and we can get to creating some plans in ORD. Thanks.